All right, good evening. The time being 7:01 on January 13th, 2020. All members of the planning board being present, call this meeting to order. Welcome everybody back and Happy New Year to everyone for another fun-filled year of planning board matters. First item on our agenda are approval of minutes. Start with November 18th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of November 18th, 2019.
Second.
All right, motion made second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Make another
November 20th.
motion for November 20th, 2019 meeting minutes.
All right, I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
And, all right,
All those opposed, motion carries. And December 16th, 2019.
make a motion to approve the minutes of December 16th, 2019.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right,
All those opposed, motion carries.
At present,
Okay. And one present. And that takes care of the minutes?
Mr. Delaney.
yes.
Yes. Okay, so we just have three.
What I do?
All right. So moving on to agenda item B, we have committee reports and administrative actions. Any committee reports anyone wishes to make at this time? All right, seeing none, takes care of committee reports. Before we move on to those other agenda items, I just want to make, because the beginning of the meeting is when we have the most folks here and the most attention on things that are being said. In everybody's packet, there's a document that says Planning Board Decision-Making Policy. I don't know if everybody saw that. It's in the back in, we have correspondence or one of the sections towards the back. But I wanted to bring it up at the beginning because I think it'd be good for some of the folks who, bring the petitions in to hear this as well. So starting now in 2020, the planning board's process for hearings that involve either subdivisions or, not things like, in-law apartments, those kind of things, but the other decisions, from now on, there won't be night of decisions. We've been working towards that anyways, but this process here, as we see a hearing, looks like it's coming to its end and looks like it'll be ready to be coming up for a vote. What we're gonna do is we're gonna create a draft decision that will include any of the requirements that we've asked for during the hearing to that point. That will be turned out to the board members as well as the petitioners a week before our follow-up meeting. Give everybody an opportunity to make sure we're all on the same page, to make sure everybody understands what's gonna be required, what conditions we're putting on it. That way, if there's any confusion, we can discuss it at that next meeting when we will likely vote. So from now on, we'll have a written decision in advance as opposed to trying to look at it after we've closed it and after we've voted and all that for any errors that we might find. So that's gonna be the process we're gonna hold everyone to, starting in 2020, that puts in an application in 2020. We can be a little more lenient for those who've were already in the pipeline because they wouldn't have known of this. So, but we'd still like to try to keep to it if we can, but, we won't be ironclad holding folks that have put in petitions in 2019, but we will for anyone who files anything for 2020 and on. All right?
So, Mr. Chairman, on that line.
Yes.
All waivers will be included in this draft as well.
They should be. And that's the idea, is that if there's anything missing, we'll have that opportunity to discuss, and any confusion that a petitioner might have about a requirement prior to us closing the hearing. That way, there's less chance of confusion, and we don't have those people coming back later with, asking for changes, things that were oversights or whatever, and then the board has to try to remember what we did. So I just think it'd make for a cleaner process for
Our
everybody.
secretary as well, all right?
So, all right, so that takes care of that.
Right.
So moving on to agenda item B, parking discussion, 20 Carter Street. Do you have anybody here for Carter Street? Okay. Apparently we do not. Okay. Well, I was up at the rink yesterday, again. And I-
Table it.
for a game, so I was there separate. I didn't go up specifically for this, but I'm gonna pass this around to everybody. Take a look at it as you get a chance. My thoughts on what would make the most sense up there to try and clarify their
I was there yesterday.
problems. It's a disaster. And it's not something that can't be simply fixed with a little bit of lining. That's my suggestion. I think that should should hopefully take care of it. But take a look. We thought someone was coming in tonight. Apparently, That did not happen unless they come in later, in which case we can bring this up later, but,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I called our secretary morning and asked if there's any information that I see they don't have any information in this package, but is there something that they gave us a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? Nothing, so
Well,
why are we even hearing this?
well, my understanding on this is this, and I know you would know because we've done this for so long, there's like 3 levels of ownership control at the rink. There's the ultimate owner, who is the one, I think, who sent in the request for us to release the bond. Then I think there's 2 other levels.
Yeah.
The person who was supposed to attend this evening is the one who really runs the rink and, you know, would be the person to speak to about this kind of on-the-ground change. That was who I thought was coming this evening to discuss. Obviously, they didn't make it in this evening, even though they'd given any indications that they were. So this is really, I mean, they're almost separate issues, but this is something hopefully we can address at some point with them, because they really need to do something. Someone's, you know, there's too many people going in too many directions, and there's too many, you know, things going on up there for the safety's sake and, you know, where people park and everything else. So I guess we'll table 20 Carter Street. If anybody comes in, we'll take it up after. But otherwise, we'll have to keep it on the agenda, I guess. All right, so brings us to agenda item B3, parking board fee price comparisons. I'm not sure.
So,
What's that?
Planning board,
What did I say?
parking.
I'm sorry, planning board fee price comparisons. So this is a continuation of our previous discussion on this. Did you have anything?
no, this was just a request from one of the planning board members.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any comments on the information that's been provided?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple comments. So
Go ahead.
looking at this spreadsheet did you make this up, Anna, or was it Alex, or?
Is Alex?
Alex, okay. So there's a couple of spots here that, and it shows Tewksbury, Andover, Billerica, Drake, Lowell, and Wilmington. So there's a number of spots here that, and I'm not trying to reinvent the fee schedule here, but some things that are charged in Andover that we don't charge in Tewksbury. Some waivers that we don't charge at all, but only Wilmington charges a couple of them. So some of the miscellaneous permits that we don't charge, but other towns do. So you know, I don't know if we need to insert those or just go as they're written. So. You know.
Well, the one thing I was, and I thought we asked it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
Were there any recommendations on?
That's what you had requested.
Yeah, are there any recommendations from the development department on fees they would like to see added, changed, upped, lowered? You know, to either be more consistent or to encourage or discourage certain things?
No, Mr. Chairman, not in particular, but I think that's open to discussion. You know, we wanted to get feedback from the planning board on what you guys want to see.
All right, so
Since you're setting the fees.
So now that we have these, I guess everybody can take a look at them, and then we'll come back one more time at our next meeting, and if anybody has any recommendations from what they see, we can discuss those then, and hopefully put this to bed for the foreseeable future anyways on the fees, so everybody knows what we have and what we don't. But thank you for putting that together. Take a look at that. All right. Moving on to agenda item B4, as-built review, 11 Hillman Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Dick Cuco from Woodland Design.
Maureen De Palma, owner.
Dennis Shan, owner.
In your
Actually, if you just pull the mic over towards you, because we need you to get picked up.
How's that?
There we go.
Yeah. In your packet, Mr. Chairman, is a letter dated December 30th, 2019, which is our response to the DPW review. And so what I did was I highlighted our responses in bold lettering. So most of the items were items that needed to be drafted and added to the plan or some relabeling. So like item number 1 was invert elevations to add the plan. Item number 2, we go to, that's a water shut-off is added to the plan. We'll go to item 3, that probably is noteworthy. In that, the question was raised that there were some striped parking spaces in front of doors, which engineering DPW felt wasn't appropriate to have them in front of doors, even though the ones that are in front of doors are reserved for the owners of those units. But what we did is we went back and we looked at the original permit, and on the original permit, we had 24 spaces and we were required to have 20. So what we did was we eliminated any spaces that were in front of doors, were in front of bollards, were in front of electric meters and what have you, and we have 22. So we're still 2 more than is required. We thought that the board could make a finding on that, that was appropriate or would allow for us to eliminate those additional spaces. So again, we had shown 24, we're only required to have 20, and by eliminating those spaces, we have 22. So we're still 2 spaces above what the bylaw requires.
Mr. Chairman, may I add something? So that reduction to 22 spaces was approved in a non-substantial change, number 1, from April 5th, 2016. So that's already been approved, and you guys have a copy of that in your packet.
Okay,
So I wanted to just mention that for the record.
okay, so we don't need any action on that today?
No.
Okay.
I just was going, thank you, Anna. I was just going through the items as they came up. Then we have this aisle over here that is, it's not, it says they require 25 feet wide for 2-way traffic. I think the bylaw says 24. And you used to be able to reduce it to 22. There's very, very limited traffic that comes through this area. We have the parallel parking spaces over in here. So we have like 21.4 feet in there. If you felt that that wasn't acceptable, then we could just make this section of the driveway one way. But given the limited use in this area, if you abide it, you'll see that there's maybe 2 vehicles parked here, and 2 vehicles parked here, and 2 vehicles over here. Basically, the users in there are very benign parking. It's not like they have customers or clients that come to them. So we'll leave that to the board's discretion to either allow it to remain as is, or if not, we'll put a one-way sign here and an arrow so that this section is one way, because they still can get out, come around, either way. 4, again, was a drafting situation. The board had previously approved in a non-substantial change the elimination of we had a grass channel in this location in the original design. We came back in and got an approval for to make that pipe and then level this off, and this is all lawn and through here. That was already approved, but we had still had the GC, we still had it labeled as grass channel. It was a drafting error, so we replaced that and we took that off. Then we went through and we updated the table over here, and we made sure that all of the pipe designations were relabeled back onto to the plan. For instance, like if this is grass channel, eyes. 701. Now we have it listed on here. Before, we just had it tabulated, and you had to go look at the design plan to see where grass channel 701 was, and but even though we had the information here. So we went back and we labeled all of those areas so that you don't have to go to the design plan now to see what was what. And the last item was the applicant had promised payment to a sidewalk fund as part of the original approval. But we computed our cost to construct that sidewalk, and it's comes to $2,800, $2,500 in bituminous asphalt at 16 cubic yards of gravel for $300. So there really isn't a bond on this, but we're still looking to get the project closed out. So that's where we're at. And one other item, Randy Burley came out to do a site inspection Monday, a week ago.
He was there Friday, I think.
Friday, and he pointed out a couple of items, and so I have a photograph, but we actually already installed the leaf guard over the outlet pipe that he was looking for. So we took photos of that, save Randy from having to come out again.
All right. Have you had an opportunity to look at the January 10th letter?
Nope, haven't seen it.
I was gonna say,
There's a number of comments on here from Mr. Hardeman regarding the address, Mr. Cuco.
You can take that for now.
What's today?
Today's the
13.
13th, that was
I guess this email is slow.
Friday.
I'll give you a moment.
Alex, you want this one?
Basically, they're looking for that.
Keep that.
I think this is,
So, almost, it's $900 more.
yeah,
Well, this is,
that's not
Okay.
yeah.
yeah,
So, it's up to you.
if that'll do it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the outlet control structure is taken care of. The MDC trap, as soon as the weather is decent, you're gonna cut that out and raise the casting up. Mr. Sheehan was told about the snow storage on the forebay. We have snow storage areas in other places, so they'll take care of that. And, you know, even though we disagree with the sidewalk number because we can construct it for less money, that's agreeable to us to give the donation of $3,700.
The other one, the only other one was the blackout on the spaces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then the as-bills. You submitted the as-bills in AutoCAD?
we will. We usually want to make sure that,
But as far as the blackout on the spaces, that,
yeah, that we're just gonna
Fine.
black over the striping, yeah.
all right. So let's run around once. Mr. Ryder?
No, I believe he's met all the requirements under Mr. Hardeman. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler?
I think with one question that still may be left is, although I can understand why it wasn't done, on the 10th, January 10th, the number one, halfway down, additionally, the drive aisle is only 19 feet wide between the westernmost parallel parking space along the south face of the building and the edge of the paved area. I could almost understand that, but if there's a problem with that, I have a recommendation. When you come around the corner, if you were to follow a straight line from the western side of the back side of the building, straight out, there's a telephone pole. And you wouldn't be moving a telephone pole for 1 foot of driveway because the curb is right up against it now. It doesn't show it on the as-built, but pretty near up against it. If you move that curb any further, there's a good chance you'll be hitting the pole. That's number one. Number two, the sidewalk, although the sidewalk in the back of the building is 8 feet wide, that restricts it a little bit. But if there's a problem in your mind, Richard, if you, because you have the 22 spaces,
Yeah, we just talked about that, we'll just black out that,
take that one right out.
black that one out, and then there's plenty of room.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Now, as long as that's reflected in the record, so that when we submit the as-built, you know, we'll address this too anyways,
Okay.
but.
Is that fine?
All set?
Mr. Delaney?
I'm all set.
Mr. Vitale?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the chair's fine as well. So we'll just incorporate that, and you can incorporate them on your plans. But what do you, if we don't have a bond, what is it you want from us?
I guess you need to,
They were okay with what we discussed?
All right. Sign off on the as-bills.
All right, so since we didn't need the
just so
non-substantial change.
that Anna
can we
doesn't, Anna can scratch it off her boards.
So with that being the case, I guess we'll just take a motion to incorporate the items as discussed this evening, which will appear on the as-built plan, and pending that, the board is fine with the submission.
Correct.
Donations.
Oh, and which includes the increase in the sidewalk.
Do we do anything with the donation?
What's that?
The donation of $2,800?
They changed it to 37.
Yeah, they did, but they don't want to pay 37.
No, they did.
agreed to.
They agreed
Yeah.
to,
We agreed.
Agreed to.
just now.
Okay,
So-
I guess I didn't hear that part.
Come on, before he changes his mind,
didn't
let's
say
finish
it very loud.
this. So, we have a motion.
I didn't think you were,
I deliberately didn't say it very loud.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
wow.
Mr. Delaney, you're killing
I was
me.
gonna say that.
I don't know, first they said they were going to put it
Thank
in
you.
themselves.
All right, moving on to
They didn't
agenda
want
item
them to spend
B5.
$3,700.
Reaffirmation plan for subdivision 255 Salem Road, Border Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Dick Cuco. I'm sure you're all familiar with this project down on Border Road. What had happened, Mr. Chairman, is that the original plan was brought in, it was approved, and then there was a subsequent plan with the change that was brought in, approved. The second plan was recorded. The first plan somehow never got recorded. We still don't even, we're not even sure who has it. We know that it was picked up from Community Development Office, but it was out there somewhere. So in going through the homeowners association agreement between our attorney and town council, Mr. Zarulis, Mr. Zarulis said, well, you know, your plan has to be recorded within 6 months. And so our people thought that the second plan being recorded within 6 months would suffice, but that wasn't a kind of an amendment to the first plan. So it was agreed upon by Attorney Singer and Attorney Zarulis that this is the format that we should use for reaffirmation. That's why there's a lengthy note, number 9, that basically explains what took place and what needs to be done to rectify it. So we will make sure that the plan gets recorded as soon as Ms. McGinty tells us that it's ready to be picked up after they make their copies. I'm going to hand deliver it myself to the registry so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
All right, okay. Mr. Delaney?
What's that?
Mr. Fratelli?
I have one question. So, Mr. Cuco, when these plans get submitted, do you get a receipt of those, accepted in a copy or something that's,
Yeah, what happened is either the engineer or the lawyer had the Mylar and they just never recorded it.
so you never got a receipt of the first plan?
From the registry, no.
Right.
Yeah, we got a notice that we picked it up from the town, so we know that we have it, not the town.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, no problem. I'll set it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fowler?
All set?
Mr. Ryder?
All set?
Chair is all set as well. So do we actually need to give you a root, like a vote that we reaffirm?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay.
And it's back here to sign, so please do so before we head out tonight.
Yeah, so as soon as that's ready, let me know. I'll come and get
And
it.
it's out of our hands again.
Out of our hands
and
again.
Goes for responsibility?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to agenda item C, Burt Road. Continued site plan special permit was continued from the 12/16 meeting. The applicant has requested to continue to February 10th, 2020 meeting.
So it's on 7:05.
Do we have a motion to continue this matter till 7:05 on 2/10/2020?
So moved.
A motion made, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries, that takes care of that one. Moving on to agenda item D, 120 Lumber Lane, use special permit also continued from the 12/16 meeting. The applicant has requested to continue to the 1/27 meeting, 2020. Do we have a motion for that, to continue that to 7:05 on the 1/27/2020 meeting?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
All those opposed, motion carries. Takes care of those two. Moving on to agenda item E, 1037 North Street, Andover Street et al. Special permit, Community Village Overlay District, revised concept plan. This was continued from our 12/16 meeting.
The first hearing was March 2015. Almost 1 year.
All right, long time no see.
Happy New Year.
Let's see what we can do about bringing this one in under a year. All right, if you just state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Street, Civil Design Consultants.
Mira Alanoli, Civil Design Consultants.
John Canaris, applicant.
All right, the floor is yours.
So, as you mentioned, it's been a little bit. I think we were here in September last. And I will spare the drawn-out recap and overview of the site itself and things like that. I think we've been here enough for that process, but just as a broad strokes, we're at the intersection of Andover and North Street, talking about a 1.6 acre combined piece of land. We've come in several times. We've started up at 25 units or so and worked our way down and eventually wound up with this layout on the far side here. This is what we brought to the table last time. And I believe, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it was generally well received. We tweaked the layout, provided that turnaround. We dropped some units. It's down to 18 units. We've done things like align the driveway with Deering Drive here, reduce the density. You know, we've taken a lot of steps to get this to a project that we felt was better received by the board from where we started. The hang-up at that time, we received a letter, I think it was shortly after the last planning board meeting, was the fire department wanted to have full access around the island here. They wanted to be able to completely maneuver that island without the need for a three-point turn. So we had a lot of back and forth. On our side, we thought we had kind of hit the check boxes as far as compliance with it. But they stood pat in that belief that they wanted to get around that island for a full, to meet fire code. So that slowed down the process a little bit. Since that time, we've had a few meetings with town administration, Anna and Mr. Hardiman and the fire department as well, trying to work through some options. The most recent meeting, we brought these two concepts with the colored buildings there to the table. And the advice we got was to bring both of those to this board to get some feedback and hopefully pin down a final direction on how we proceed with this before we take one of those two or some variation of one of those two to another final set of plans that we hopefully can bring back and move forward with. So concept, we'll call this one concept one over here, this version here, which looks very similar to the layout you saw last. We've got the 18 units spread out over 5 buildings, very similar configuration, no real changes in the unit counts in the buildings or anything like that, but what we have done is we've allowed the fire department to go, the fire truck to make its way all the way around that island without that need for a 3-point turn. The trade-off to make that happen is this building to the south here is now over that 50-foot setback. So we have a 50-foot side and rear yard setback because these parcels abut a residential district. So that setback gets significantly increased as if we were next to a commercial space or something like that. It'd be much less than that, but we do have that 50 feet to contend with. So the setback on that building is now, as it's shown, is about a little over 33 feet. So we lose 17 feet there to make that work. I believe way back when we started, there was at least some discussion with the board about the potential for such a waiver to be granted if it made the project better, so something along those lines. So we felt that this was at least worth generating, bringing to the table, seeing what the thoughts were. The layout is I feel it's the best layout, that this type of layout with the turnaround and the units spread out like that, it has that more of a community feel on site. So we developed that one. The second concept is this one on the right-hand side over here. This is the same 18 units. We've spread them out further. It's over 6 buildings instead of 5, but the same unit count. I should say guest parking is comparable on both of these. I think we picked up one on concept 2 there, but we're at the same mark that we have been hitting for the past few submissions. We've got 18 units spread out over the 6 buildings there. There's no setback waiver in this one, but the trade-off here is it's back to more of this kind of T-shaped site layout and driveway access. We come in, the driveway entrance is in the same spot, but we have more of this kind of T-shape, which is what we kind of originally started with. So we did want to bring it to the table as well to show that this was possible without that 50-foot waiver request. So that's another option on the table here as well. We've brought both of these directly to the fire department just to kind of get some preliminary comments. I know it's rough, they're conceptual layouts, but we did bring them there. No major red flags, really just reiterated that they wanted their truck to be able to make its way throughout the site without hitting curbs and parking spaces. And we're confident we can do that with both of these, and we'll make sure that enough detail is provided to satisfy them in that regard. So really the hope tonight was to bring these 2 plans, get some feedback from this board, hopefully walk out of here with some clear direction on which one of these we bring to a final design process, which we will jump on immediately, and be back before you with the full set of plans and letters and drainage calculations and things like that. I guess just the last thing I'd say, in both of these cases, with plans for stormwater and utilities and things like that is all the same. Like we had a pervious pavement design, which we'd hold and things like that. We've also, last week, we're at the Conservation Commission. This building here is now in the 50-foot, what is it, no build zone, no build zone, I believe is what the 50-foot's called. They do have an allowance in the bylaw to disturb up to 10% of that area, which we are under the threshold, but we did bring it to them to open that discussion, and no major red flags came out of that meeting. So we feel like we're in pretty decent standing, and then this concept is even better. So we feel like we're in pretty good standing with conservation, and now we're here for the planning board feedback. So with that, any questions?
Before I open up to the board, I'll just ask one question. Whether it makes any difference to anyone, I don't know, but do you have a preference of the 2?
I think it would be this one. I think this is a better project. I think it's a better layout. I actually even like, so when this building, you can see how this building's over here, kind of tucked more in the corner. When this building moved back, we were actually able to get a little guest parking between those 2 buildings, which I think is a benefit. We've had discussions about the parking being far away from all those units, and now we have a little more in there. So I think that's just a better project personally. But again, we didn't want to just charge forward without at least having a discussion about that waiver request, because we know we need some relief there.
Okay, good. All right, Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, believe it or not, I concur with you.
There we go. It's a good start.
Of the 2, I like that one, the better. But my only question is, I want you to think back to some of the other meetings we've had, and the only question from an abutter is the gentleman representing the house to the side of your area. And he was here 3 or 4 times. What kind of question is he gonna have if he sees, when they see that now they have these 4 buildings into the, closer to the lot line, closer to the wetland area? Do you think that's going to be a problem down the road?
Well, I think certainly as part of a full package that would come back as a submission, we'd work with the landscape architect to enhance that screening as much as we possibly can. We've worked with them to identify some trees that are gonna come down just as a, neighborly type thing. The drainage patterns would be the same. Right now, or at least in the last submission, there's the stormwater is being channeled over to this area here, which is where it goes today, and we would maintain that same pattern. So,
Good.
we're losing the 17 feet, but we're gonna work hard to make sure that that building is shielded as much as possible and that water it doesn't become more of an issue than it already is today.
And one of the reasons, if the fire department was the only people that were gonna be using this T turnaround, I'd say, hey, they're gonna have to go in there, practice, get used to it. But today's day and age of all the packages being delivered to everybody's house, people backing up, the less you have backing up in a travel way,
Sure.
the safer it is, I think. So that's why, excluding the problem with the next door neighbor, I would be in favor of, if you want to call it item number 1,
Concept one. Concept plan one.
that's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Delaney?
Yeah, I'm in favor of concept plan one, too. I like the fact that there's not as much backing up if there's deliveries, even plowing snow. With the circular driveway and so forth, even with the plowing of snow, with all the things that go on there. That's what I believe. I'm all set. Concept one.
Mr. Fratelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, after all this time, you're still back at that you need waivers. So that's an issue for me. I do like the design of that project, but again, you're encroaching on the no disturb zone, 17 feet. That's a good chunk of change, considering it's probably more than half of the building, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
right around that mark, yep.
I'm not that fond of concept 2 because if you are in unit number, or the last unit here, 18, is that what it is? In order to have a visitor park, it's quite a distance for them to park and have to come around. This provides close proximity visitor parking in concept 1 versus concept 2, but again, the waiver is kind of bothersome with me, but I would be much rather in favor of 5 buildings rather than 6 buildings, which you're incorporating for concept 2. So for that, concept 1 does, make a nice flow. Visitor parking is closer, but I have a feeling that Mr. McNamara, who was in before, is gonna have a problem with the design because of the encroachment and because of the stormwater issues possibly at the site, but I do think it does flow better and works better, so for that, I'd be in favor of concept 1 as well. My other question I had was, I thought we had an outstanding issue regarding the letter from the company that does the testing for the contaminants. I think you said you had something like that, but we don't have it, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I believe.
You said it was tested, you said it was
Yeah,
clean.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but we did not get that letter, I think, but you did say it was clean. So I think we need that letter with the,
Yeah.
application as well, so. but-
We
I've had that.
submitted it.
What's that?
I've had that letter.
I don't think we ever had the letter. Well,
At this point, just.
Yeah,
send it next
the
to
intent
project.
was to get it in previously. It's been so
Okay.
long, though, we'll just include it in the next package for sure, yeah.
Other than that, I think I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Ryder?
Thank you. I'll agree with Mr. Fratalia. Mr. McNamara, unfortunately, is not here. He attended all the other meetings and was very concerned about the setbacks there. And, I think looking at, we went through many iterations of this to get to the point that we weren't looking for any forgiveness on those setbacks. Did you look at, concept 2 in removing building in 17 and 18th and relocating up to the front portion, front corner where your passive recreation area is? And still giving yourself the turnaround for concept 1, but, relocating, keeping your 6 buildings on North Street and relocating that 2 building closer to your entrance? Have you looked at that? If you can get that in that?
Well, so we have the same 50-foot setback on where the recreation area is, so that would be in that area if we were to do that. And, in the turnaround, we kicked around, kind of keeping the turnaround with something more like concept 2, but that turnaround is really kind of serving that building 5, units 15 through 18. So, it's something we could do. It just doesn't have the same kind of utility of accessing buildings, just be kind of a way in and out as opposed to getting to a certain space. But yeah, we've kind of, the reason that became passive recreation is because we were trying to not, there'd be another waiver if we had buildings over there. So.
You answered my other question. You don't want another waiver. So, we, as you stated, we've been back and forth multiple units, but, we were down to no waivers with setbacks, and for that particular reason, along, at the 1015 North Street. And I'm concerned that the resident's going to have a big issue with that. So, I'm a little concerned with that, and I wish he was here to have the ability to voice his opinion. True, I understand.
Anything else, Mr. Ryder?
No, that's it for now, thank you.
All right, so from my perspective, I'm also for concept 1, and for a few reasons. One, it's the most, it keeps with where we were when we left off, which is where we kind of fought to get to. Really, this revision would be to provide something to the fire department that they've asked for, so that they don't have to make, a turnaround different than they would prefer. So it's not really as much for your doing as it is an attempt to comply with a request from the fire department. Also, and this is maybe just my perspective, but I said at the beginning, I'm much more inclined to give a waiver when you could do it without it, but asking for the waiver makes it a better project. You could build this without it. You could use design 2 or concept 2. I don't like concept 2. I like this concept because I like the concept we had gotten to before. This just requires it to be pushed back a little bit in order to fit the fire trucks around. I do like that it adds some guest parking over nearer to those other buildings. I like the way that it allows for the path that leads off the sidewalk to come into the site and doesn't come into the back of the dumpster section. I don't know why that would be necessary, but it just seems to be. I just, and I appreciate the concern on that the abutter had expressed, but my recollection was that even at the end of where we got to on this project, I didn't get the impression that Mr. McNamara was on board with the project anyways. So I'm not really sure we're ever gonna get to that point. So I think it comes down to the board deciding what project it feels fits, looks, works the best. And I think the concept 1 does that, and it only asks for the waiver because it makes it a better project, not because you couldn't do this otherwise.
That's right.
You could do it otherwise.
Yep.
And I think that's a big difference from some of the other projects when they could not move forward in any other way. You can get the exact same number of buildings we're at, just in a different configuration. I just don't think anyone up here has advocated for that configuration because I don't think anybody up here likes it. I know I don't. I like the turnaround I think it makes for a better looking project. I think it makes for a better flow within the site. You know, and as you pointed out, the setback requirement is a byproduct of the change in zone that you bump into right there. If it weren't there, if that weren't the zone you were bumping into on that corner, that wouldn't be the same setback. So for those reasons, I'm far more inclined to go with this version, especially because it basically does everything we asked you to do up to September, but now it adds one more layer, which is meeting the ask from the fire department. So from that perspective, I think it makes the most sense for all of those. So that's my thoughts. Any other thoughts right now from the board? I'll open it up to the public.
The only other reason I like number one better is because of the 3 parking spaces down at the corner, at the turn. Whereas if you look at concept 2, you have to walk, you would have to walk the whole length of it on a day like today.
Yes,
If you were a guest. Whereas here, at least you have these guest spaces down here. The guest spaces are spread out more, so I like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have another comment. Is there any possibility of moving a couple of those units you have that are in the setback lane to the corner? So you'd have one free parking space and then maybe move them on an angle?
So,
So you know where the 3 parking spots are on the corner?
yeah,
Maybe move a couple of units to that area? And rather than having 2 buildings on the end, maybe you could have, rather than having 4 buildings in that setback area, only 2 with,
yeah, I mean, there's some room here, we could extend this building down. I mean, the other thing we've talked about is that wall of units, I guess,
Yeah.
use quotes, is we're trying to divide this up a little bit, so, you know what I mean? So there's a trade-off there a little bit. I know what you're saying, and we do have some room.
so if you put
here.
two in the corner there, on that angle maybe, and then 2 next to it, you'd have 6 buildings again, but still, you wouldn't have 4 units in the setback zone and have only 2.
It's something we could look at, and try and
Keep
balance
the
out
N2
parking.
maybe, keep the N2 and then move the other ones into the corner if you could, I'm not sure, so.
I don't think it'll work.
So where the 3 parking spots are there, you'd only have 1 and 2 buildings.
Right.
And then 2 on the other side and then 2 at the very end, so, you
Right.
know what I'm saying? But I don't know whether you have enough space and,
To be honest with you, but looking at this, I didn't have that total thought that you had. I don't think there's room in there for 2 side by side.
okay. Well, there's 3 parking spots, that's the only thing, see?
Right.
Yeah, but then the visitors'
I'm also
parking.
concerned with adding more to that North Street side like that, because now we're getting back into that row house look we
Right.
didn't want. Just, again, for 17 feet, which we're still gonna be in that 17 feet even if you leave 2 units. You're in it no matter what, if you go with this concept. I just, like I said, I don't know that I don't think that makes it better by putting more out on North Street like that. Those 4 units are the most sort of hidden of the whole project when you think about it, because everything else is mostly gonna be seen. Those 4 units are the only ones that really aren't. So I much prefer them staying where they are. Other board members, I don't know what you
Yeah.
think.
Mr. Chairman, to be honest with you, it appears from the membership, everyone is in favor of a C1. Maybe with some modification, I've said it.
Yep.
Mr. Ryder said it, Vinnie has said it. I'm not sure, they could look at it if they want to look at it. But other than that, we're probably ready to take action on this.
Well, I mean, just, they gotta bring in the new numbers, but as
Yes,
far as,
yes.
there isn't much more from us as long as the numbers work.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So with that, I'm gonna open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this? Going once, twice? All right. Bring it back to the board. I presume continue to the next,
Please.
that's sufficient time for what you need to do.
27th?
All right, so that would be at 7:10 on the 27th. Do I have a motion to continue?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. All right, see you guys on the 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
moving on to agenda item F. 135 Pleasant Street, Elementary School, Town of Tewksbury, site plan special permit continued also from our 12/16 meeting.
Here we go.
While these folks get settled, I will reiterate what I said the last time. We're here to discuss the zoning portion of the elementary school. We're not here to relitigate whether the school should have been approved or any of those type topics. We're not gonna get into that, we're not gonna do it again. We're just sticking to what the planning board is being asked to look at. Any questions, comments on that? Absolutely. But like I said, we're not gonna relitigate the school and whether it should happen or not happen or any of that. That's not for us to deal with. So when you guys get settled, if you just state your names to the record, the floor will be yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Peter Collins, CBRE.
Bill Beatrice, Flansburgh Architects.
Bill Marnich, Engineering, Civil.
Sam Basta, CSS, Landscape Architect.
All right, the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're turning back from the last meeting we had with the board back on November 18th with respect to the new elementary school project at 135 Pleasant Street. We have had some meetings with the town engineer and other town agencies. Since that time, additional information has been submitted to the planning board from our last hearing. It's been submitted to the town planner, and we're here this evening to answer any additional questions and provide some updates to the board. With us this evening is certainly the designer, Flansburgh Architects, several of their consultants, the civil engineer, landscape engineer, traffic engineer as well. So if you'd like, Bill, any updates that you want to provide, or if the committee, or excuse me, the board has any questions, we can tailor them towards those questions. We have some additional renderings that was requested at the last meeting for informational purposes as well.
All right, if you guys have updates, if you want to give those first before we start asking questions, just in case those answer a question before they're even asked.
Sure, I mean, in terms of carryover from the last meeting, you guys were looking for renderings.
Just take the mic.
Yeah. So this is our front entry. This has been presented a couple of times.
It's on.
It's on, okay, sorry. So we've presented, this, you've probably seen it because this has been out in town, I think a few times, but this is the front entry. The Ryan School is here, and this is the space between the two schools. And actually, maybe this might be better. So this view that you're seeing right here is this sweep here with the Ryan School. So we have this nice courtyard shared space between the two buildings. And in terms of material, we're looking at brick, that kind of an iron spot brick that matches the kind of the color scheme of the Ryan School. Some curtain wall, a glazed corner here. Administration is right there, so we get some nice visibility on the drop-off, pick-up and drop-off. And center space here is the cafeteria, and this is the main entry of the school. So this would be the student drop-off. You come around over here. So that's just a quick overview of the rendering of where we are. I think I presented a couple, not last time, but the time before, the floor plans. They have not changed in any form or fashion, nor will they, as being this is where we are in the process. I mean, other than some minor tweaks, but in terms of the general layout, classrooms, media center, that all remains the same. I don't know, maybe Bill, you can give an update on where we are with the site design and maybe the questions from.
Sure. So at this time, as Bill has mentioned about the building itself, pretty much the site itself has stayed the same since we were before the planning board back in November. Not much has changed except for what you see in yellow are some of the infiltration systems that we have to handle the stormwater runoff from the site over in this. So just a little bit different. Previously, we had a subsurface infiltration below this proposed parking lot over by the practice field. And just because of the soil material, the expected large rocks that are visible and so forth, we decided to take that out and put in a rain garden over by the edge of the area of the clearing there near the wetland resource area. But pretty much everything we've cut down on the number of systems. We had at one point about 10 systems just until we gathered all the data. We've performed all soil testing all throughout the site, and it's pretty much sand all throughout, so it can provide a good recharge of stormwater runoff to percolate through the soil and back into the groundwater systems. And right now we are just kind of fine tuning some of our updates and so forth. We did meet with the Conservation Commission and the town engineer last week. They each had a letter of comments in which we are addressing those comments at this time. We plan to submit updated plans and documents by the end of this week to them as well as to this board for the next meeting. And I'll leave it at that. So I'll wait till some of the comments that you had at our first meeting come up and we can address them at that time.
All right. The only other one, I don't know if you guys have anything. Do you have anything specific that you want to discuss on the traffic?
I don't think we have anything specific to discuss. We do have the engineer from Niche who did the traffic study, so, we can get him up here to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, just if there's anything that they want to point out, I mean, obviously it's a
Nick, you want to?
rather large volume.
Sure.
What's that?
Hi,
Could you state your name for the record?
certainly. This is Nick Avan from Niche Engineering, traffic engineer.
All right, are there any comments you'd like to?
No, I mean, we submitted a traffic impacts report in 2018, November. We revised it just cosmetically late last year and we submit that. But nothing on the terms of analysis has changed,
Well,
with just some
We'll keep you
figures.
at the table in case any questions come up from the board, so we'll start with Mr. Ryder.
I've seen this from, I don't know, the some starting points a long time. I serve on the committee, so the elementary school building committee. So I've seen this, I've seen the changes. I think, from some of my concerns in the beginning were traffic on Pleasant Street, and we addressed that with the road around the school. We've also, a couple of my concerns, limiting one-ways during certain hours on a couple of the side streets onto Pleasant Street, so we could funnel some traffic out during those school hours, 7 to 9, and 1:30 to 3:30, something along those lines. I think I went through the original traffic, a few more pictures in this one, but I think the drainage is being addressed, and that was a big concern from some of the neighbors. But I think the team has done a great job and addressed, some of my concerns, as well as the other committee members, as well as the residents. And we've had many residents that have come into and sat through all the meetings and all the presentations, and I think the group has done a great job of addressing those concerns. I'm all set for now. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Fattah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So regarding the traffic study, I'd like you to explain to the public that's here tonight some of the numbers that you foresee as far as traffic coming into the site and out of the site, so that we don't just have these numbers, so the general public has it as well, and people at home listening to it. All right, so if you could go through some of that. I know they're on page 12 and 39 and 40 is a summary, so they're pretty staggering numbers, I know, coming in and out of the site, so
Well,
I'll
we-
have
we
some more
try to be-
questions for you afterwards, if you could.
Absolutely.
So,
You got to bear with me because I did this study about 2 years ago, so I might have to go and refer to.
well,
I
we
try
just
to
seen-
do that as
We
much as
just
I
seen
can.
this Friday night, so, but it's still overwhelming piece of document here, so. go
So
ahead.
the way we did it, we had a site visit at the site, at the existing grind school. We did counts in the morning and afternoon pick, in the morning drop-off and the afternoon pickup. And then we generated the trips based on 790 new students coming in there.
Okay.
And to be conservative on the side, we decided, even though they have, there's a staggered 40 minutes per schools, I think the fifth and sixth graders, they're being dismissed at 2:45 or 2:40 and, or 2:30, and 2 to 4th graders are around 3:10. Just to be conservative, we just combined all the numbers, just that's within the hour. And so we have, we generated trips based on 1,368, I believe, students. No, 1,366 students. And IT has, Institute of Transportation Engineers, this is the one that we use for generating the traffic. It's estimating daily trips of 2,726 trips in and out. That means 1,363 is going to be entering and 1,363 exiting per day. That translates into weekday morning peak hours. That means during drop-off, 479 cars are going to enter the site and 409 are exiting. And in a peak hour, in a PM on a pickup, 209 entering and 255 exiting. So we distribute these volumes and assign them based on the existing travel patterns and logical engineering judgments. And we come up with a proposed 2025 year, which is the built year. That's 7 years after the 2018 year. That was our base year, the existing year. And the way we do it is existing condition, what's there right now, and then future no built in 7 years if there's no school, and then future built one with the new school and the new numbers. That's how we analyze the numbers.
Okay. So if I read this correctly, you're figuring on more people coming in the morning, dropping off kids, and then leaving, or coming up and coming in the afternoon to pick up?
That's how the numbers come up, yes.
Okay. That's what was interesting to me, is that it seems like the majority of parents, according to your numbers, are dropping students off in the morning, and then they're going home by bus in the afternoon. Is that
Well,
accurate, or am I
in the afternoon,
reading too much into
you
it?
have programs, school schedule,
Okay.
activities, and that takes into
Some of the
account for
numbers
some
off
of-
as far
some
as
of that.
exiting in
Right.
the afternoon, right? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So if that, I mean, I don't know if this is probably a school department issue, but it seems like there's a lot of vehicles coming in and out of there on a regular basis every single day, to the schools, to both schools. So I didn't know if we could limit that somehow with not allowing parents to drop off kids every single day to school, or picking them up every single day at the afternoon. I mean, maybe there's some type of plan that can do that. I don't know if it's ever been even talked about, or if it's ever been discussed in any other schools, but I had that idea somewhere today, because that's always been a problem at that school now, with students cars being backed up on Pleasant Street, but it seems like we drop off more kids by car nowadays than ever, I think, for some reason. I don't know why, but that seems to be the numbers according to what you have here. So,
Yeah, but just one point, that number includes both schools. It's not only the new school.
Right. So I think according to this, you're saying 888 trips entering and exiting every day. Is that accurate, or am I?
That is true. That's
Morning, is that
800
a morning?
Yes, that's 888 is the total
Okay,
entering and exiting, which translate into 479 entering and 409 exiting.
okay, all right. And I did read you're figuring on 60 cars in that
Right.
queue circle?
And those are not all students and stuff. Some of them are the staff as well.
Yeah.
That's included in that.
All right, so I know you probably haven't taken this into consideration, but there was a projected plan of having 39 homes being built in close proximity to the school.
Okay?
So that may increase a little bit of traffic in that area, but,
Well, we use a background growth factor of 1% for the future and
Okay.
to grow the traffic.
right,
And should cover that
yeah. I
additional.
mean, not all those cars are gonna be coming down Pleasant Street, I understand that. but,
Correct.
So in your study, let me ask you a question. Coming out of school, more people go left or right?
Well, we have it, I believe we had taken a left more. of
Towards
a-
Main Street, right?
Towards the
That's what I
central.
read as well, so, but, this is a
I
pretty,
believe it was like 60 or 40. I think I had 60 and 40.
okay. So the study does also have a conclusion on page 39 and 40. That's your findings, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
In the study book here?
Yes.
Page 39 and 40 is all your conclusions and recommendations,
Yes.
right? So, and
The
no
rest of them are
traffic,
appendices.
and no traffic light was really discussed as far as a
Well,
need there, correct?
It's a good question, because it meets one of the warrants, but it's a 1-hour warrant. And it might meet the school crossing warrant as well.
More
we're gonna
school
put-
crossing than light, correct?
I'm sorry?
More school crossing issue than a light, is that
Well, if
accurate?
we have crosswalks across the Pleasant Street, that might trigger the warrant for the school crossing as well. So
Okay.
normally with 1-hour warrant, you don't, it's not required to have a signal. It's just a minor warrant.
Yeah, okay. All right, I don't have any more questions for now, Mr. Chairman, I'm all set, so.
Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because some of us, all only can see what we've seen for over 10 years. The backup of traffic onto Pleasant Street from the pickups in the afternoon. Not so much in the morning, as they go in, they're more staggered. Whereas the children are coming out of school basically at the same time. So everybody wants to get queued in the line to pick up their children,
Right.
which brings about 20 cars out on Pleasant Street. I just want to be assured that this new plan is going to exclude that from happening.
So during our site visit, when we do the observations, it's exactly how you mentioned, the queue
Right.
extends right on Pleasant Street and
Right.
towards Main Street, and people just come in and park. And a lot of it, with the elementary school usually, is the parents, in the morning, they drop off their kids, they want to go to work, they don't have time, But in the afternoon, they usually arrive half hour to 45 minutes early. mingle, chit-chat, play dates, till they pick up their kids and go. So the way we have it right now, the design, we have about 353 parking spaces within the site, which you do have parking spaces right now, but it's not utilized properly. They park, and you don't really have enough queue space for the parents during the pickup and drop-off. Our design has about 60, place for 60 vehicles to queue up around for a live pickup and drop-off. So that should, right there, should probably eliminate that queuing back into the Pleasant. Other than that, I cannot guarantee.
Well, I think we're looking for a guarantee, to be honest with you. It almost, that comment before almost reminds me of the commercial on TV. Where
Which one?
people are talking about, okay, well, maybe, when you're talking to a doctor.
Oh,
I'm sure you've seen it.
absolutely.
And that's not what we're looking for. We need some good engineering advice so that we can assure ourselves and assure the public and the rest of the town that it's not going to have what we've had in over 10 years.
For Institute of Transportation Engineer, IT, and also the parking generation as a recommendations for parking. And for a school this size, they recommend to have 253 parkings. And the school is providing 353 striped parkings, 8 of them for ADA, and also 60 live pickup and drop-off. So that's way more than the requirement by the parking generation. And I believe that it's going to solve a lot of problems.
Maybe we should pay the fancier buses and maybe mini coaches or, so they're not thinking they're driving in the loser cruiser. That's what they call them. I don't know. I just hope everything will work out fine. And I know with someone like Peter at the directing here over, I know I embarrass him all the time, but he has a great lead on things, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so for my part on this, I guess, I'm sorry, Mr. Delaney, I thought I went with you first, I apologize. Mr. Delaney?
Actually, in the very beginning of this thing, I really didn't have any questions. But I've asked that same question over and over and over. Are the pickups and drop-offs going to affect Pleasant Street? Everybody has guaranteed me with the dual times, one school getting out at one time or another, that there's no way that this can happen. Now, this gentleman here is the guy to put it all together, and he's not guaranteeing it. Now, which way are we going? Are we going to have the same, we're spending $100 million. Can we clear up Pleasant Street with $100 million, or can't we? Somebody's, we got two different stories here now. And the only question that I have asked with all the meetings I've attended is the pickups and drop-offs at that school. The only question, and the answer I get is because the driveway is so long to go around, and they can pick up and drop off and do everything they're supposed to do, and it's going to be monitored. But now I'm hearing that he can't guarantee it.
I think if I may,
yeah, go ahead.
one thing. If you look at the current situation at the school, we're still going to have you're still going to have the Ryan School. If you look at the current situation, the way cars come in during the pickup, you're lucky if you can get 25 cars in there. The way the new traffic pattern is going to work, there's no way for an individual to come in and stop 7 spaces in. the way the new traffic pattern is, it's a one-way directional around the entire, so they have to come in and go all the way around. And they'll be staged all the way down towards the face of Pleasant Street. So you don't have the ability to stop 20 feet in. There's gonna be someone behind you, moving you all the way through. So staging that, you're gaining a 60-car alleyway that we don't currently have. Right now, you're lucky if you can get 10 cars, 15 cars, if people are pulled in properly. So you're gonna take those 20 or 30 cars that are consistently on Pleasant Street and move them onto the property, around the entire back of the building. Now, that's gonna be for the Ryan School, that's gonna clear out, and now we're gonna bring in the new younger kids and do the same exact thing. And hopefully, that with the location of this, parents may, decide to use the transportation that is provided.
I understand the concept. It's been explained to me 100 times. But tonight he asked the question. I've been guaranteed that the traffic wasn't gonna back out onto Pleasant Street.
Can I ask for a clarification, Mr. Delaney? Can I ask him for a clarification that might, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just to separate the portions. It is designed properly to work, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you cannot guarantee what bad actors may do.
That's exactly what I'm trying to
So
say.
I think that's just, it's an important clarification, I think, that they're saying it's done correctly, but they can't guarantee what I'm gonna do if I show up at the school and do something I shouldn't do. That's all. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I-
So continue, Mr. Delaney, I didn't interrupt. I just want to clarify that point.
Like I said, the only confusion, and it's the only question I've had since the very beginning, since this whole thing went into design. I just I would feel real comfortable knowing that the cars are not gonna back up onto Pleasant Street anymore. That was my concern from the very beginning. And he asked the question, and I heard that there's no guarantee that they can do that. Or that's what I thought I heard. So if you're telling me that this, I understand the plan, and I think the plan can work, but I think I was just looking for a little bit more than knowing that a plan can work with dual times and the driveway being as long as it is. I understand that concept, but I think my opinion is I was just looking for a little bit more. That's why I was asking, or saying what I'm saying.
I kind of slid up because I wanted to jump in and make the point about the guarantee. That's absolutely correct. We can't guarantee exactly how the parents are gonna act or behave. So, and there's gonna be a learning curve, of course, once the school opens up. But if I may, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but what we were looking at is, our studies have the drop off here. So we have all this queue space around the building, and that's what we're all talking about, this entire queue space. I believe the cars that we were anticipating for drop off, the queue ended somewhere around here, That's what our analysis was. So we have all this, let's call it surplus queue. So again, if 1 million parents want to get to the school early because they want to try to get out, we can't guarantee, that they won't do this. But there is a lot of surplus in this plan as it's laid out now. And yes, it should alleviate, it's designed to alleviate this congestion onto Pleasant Street.
Okay. The thing is, when you were talking about the driving in, then they started to talk about parking spaces. I don't think the people coming in to pick up their kid is worried about finding a parking space.
They're not. They stay on this loop.
They're gonna go through the loop.
They can't
They're gonna
stop.
come over.
And they can't stop, and,
Right.
yeah. And when we say, I think Nick made the point when, I forgot what the number was, 400 trips coming in or out, that's not all dropping off. That's staff coming in to park and
Sure.
et cetera.
Okay, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right, so, Mr. Ryder made a point that I was gonna make in trying to answer the other question, which is, if it keeps the cars from backing out onto Pleasant Street, that's the ultimate goal, because that's the current problem. It's the one that needs to be fixed in
Right.
terms of, just the setup is forcing that to happen. It's
Yes.
not necessarily even bad actors, that's just simply the limitations of the space they're working with is backing cars out, and they're getting stopped out on Pleasant Street because they can't.
Yes.
This doesn't allow for that, because it's a one-way looping you all the way around. The only way anything should stop out on Pleasant Street is if someone inappropriately stops on Pleasant Street to let somebody out, which is, you can't stop that other than having somebody out there, because that's something you are not supposed to do.
Yeah.
So the only time anyone would be stopped out on Pleasant Street is by doing something wrong. It's not the setup that would cause it. It is, I have a hard time envisioning a possibility of enough cars actually getting, queued up to ever back out onto, so that part should be alleviated, absolutely.
Yes.
It would only happen from somebody, for some unexplainable reason, coming in the beginning and stopping, for no good reason. And there's no way to get back out. There'd be no good reason to stop. But Mr. Ryder's point of that, if what actually is the biggest problem is people cannot get out of the school and back out onto Pleasant Street, and are getting stuck in there for longer periods of time, Mr. Ryder's point, which is maybe then they'll use the bus system as it's set up to be used more, simply out of frustration of not being able to get out of there and get where they're trying to go in the morning, because dropping off is no longer a preferred option. I think that's ideal if honestly that, one, because my kids are almost out of school, so it's not me. But if you can't get out of there, then maybe you'll stop driving through there. I mean, you don't have to drop off. That's an option.
Right.
A bus will come and pick up your child because it's set up that way. So if they take the bus, and that's what I refer to it as, the bus, if they take the bus and go to school, it alleviates even more of this traffic and people driving out onto Pleasant Street if they find that they're frustrated in getting back out onto Pleasant Street during the drop-offs. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's actually a good thing. And as long as the traffic isn't backing out onto Pleasant Street the way it does now, I'm not sure what more we can ask for the concept and for the plan than that, is to say that can't happen unless someone does something wrong. It's not a design flaw, it's not a poor setup, it's not a failure to think ahead to what things might happen. I mean, your example, you did the numbers all as if both schools were doing drop-off and pickup at exactly the same time. That's not the case. It's not as staggered as maybe you might like it, the way, if this was the elementary and what I would refer to as the junior high. Because the way the drop-offs are done is they're staggered through high school, it's staggered in a way that these two schools are the closest together in drop-off. It's unfortunate, it's just a byproduct of what schools you're putting there. But by doing your numbers as one drop-off and one pickup, you went with the very highest number you could possibly get to, which there should be about a 40-minute lag between that actually happening, about half. So it's not that it'll half your number, but there's some time built in there for some of those people to already cleared out of there because their kid's been in school for 40 minutes.
Correct. Right.
Theoretically, if they're on time. So I think going with the most conservative, conservative sounds wrong. Conservative meaning worst case, I think would be the better way to say it. Conservative almost makes it sound like you're doing the least problematic. That's not the case. This is worst case. This is if both schools opened at 8 a.m. and everybody's showing up for two schools at the same time. So I think, and Mr. Ryder sat in on these, and I know he's heard a lot more about it than anybody else, but I can't see a better setup for this. I mean, we're in a position now, the school is going there. That's no longer a question. What is presented to us, is this the best setup for having those two schools there? That's the feeling, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you know, I'm not sure that there's anything more in terms of the traffic setup that we can do to try to address what was the biggest concern, is traffic backing out onto Pleasant Street. I don't think we can have a bigger queue space than what we have here. You've got 60 gets you to about the beginnings of the football field. If that's 60, then I'm gonna guess 40 to 50 more is the surplus.
We have about 135, right?
135. So if 135
Maximum.
cars were all there at the exact same time, out of, what was the number you said that you were working on for one, if both schools were at the same time?
Four-
It's-
400.
400 would be coming in at
Yes.
once if you had both schools, which isn't the case. So you're talking about, give or take, a half of that number.
Correct.
So that's almost an entire school's worth of people if they were all there at the same time, to get all the way back before a car should back out onto Pleasant Street. Correct?
Absolutely correct.
So, I mean, I think that's about as close to an assurance, I think, as we're gonna get, you know. Sure, there's somebody signing their life away, but I think, you know, that portion of it is as well dealt with as you can. My other question is, on the getting back out onto Pleasant Street, what is the feeling on how easy that's going to be for the traffic to get out of the school site?
Well, based on our analysis, taking a left, you're gonna have a queue of 20 cars. That's gonna be the worst-case scenario. Taking a right, there's a queue of 4 cars. Coming in the morning or afternoon, you have 3 cars taking a left into the site, and 1 car taking a right into the site. So it's not that bad. The worst-case scenario is taking a left out of the school, which is the 20 cars.
Right, most likely in the morning.
And that's based on both schools together, again,
Right.
worst-case scenario.
So, again, if you were going with the more likely, you're talking about
10 cars.
Okay. At least for part of it. I mean, there's gonna be some overlap maybe potentially in there, but, okay. All right, well, that's it for Mr. Fowler.
I have a question for the future when we see the final plans. A couple of people in the back will laugh at this, but after spending probably 10 years on the district security team for all of schools in Tewksbury, my one question is, when you come out here, and this goes along with your answer, will there be 2 lanes of egress out of this driveway, left and a right?
I believe that we have a left and a right turn
You want to walk.
Exiting the queue.
exiting.
Exiting the queue. So as you come out here, it's still one way. This road is still part of the one-way loop.
Right.
And then once you get on Pleasant Street, you can go across left and right at that point. Is that your question?
No, can 2 cars come out at once?
No, I'm asking the question, please. When you come around and you go around the backside, picking up, and you're queuing,
Yeah,
but let's do the Ryan School.
yeah. So,
You're not
okay,
gonna be in that area. How are you gonna get in? What driveway do you use to get in?
you always have to get in this driveway.
Okay. And then where will they start queuing?
Right.
For the Ryan School,
Yes,
everyone gets dropped off at the same spot.
okay. Pickup.
Same scenario. Everyone gets picked up at the same spot.
Well, when do they go around the backside of the school?
It goes this way around.
Let him do it.
When they come, when you come in, you loop all the way around,
Thank you.
all the way around, and you're dropping off here.
Okay.
And that's for the Ryan and for the new school.
Okay, so I still ask the same question. Are you gonna have a left and a right lane leaving?
No, it's one lane.
It's wide enough, I don't know that,
My understanding is,
We'll figure it
my analysis is based on a dedicated right turn and a dedicated left turn.
It's
at the
Thank you,
exit.
that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm asking.
Yes,
Yes.
Do you roughly have 24 feet?
we have a
We
24
have
feet
24
around the
feet.
whole
Yeah.
lane,
Yeah.
so
So there
if you
is, that was
have,
designed for the emergency, we talked about that in the
Right.
beginning. In case there was ever an issue, the cars could
Cars.
pull over to right, and the emergency vehicle could loop the entire property
Exactly.
to get back out. That was
that's correct.
original, one of the first things we discussed with the loop was there was the ability for that vehicle to
It's a one-way.
traverse all the way around.
So when they come out the lane, there's going to be a left turn and a right lane, a left lane and a right lane when they leave, correct?
24 feet wide.
It's wide enough to accommodate, I haven't.
That's a yes. Because all I can say is if not, you're going to have more of a backup in the school. Sure, I know that, and then they'll take buses. You know, that's not going to happen. But that's, I thank you for your answer. And I hope to see that on the plan. Thank you.
All right, any other questions before I open it up? No?
I think it was answered, but the loop that goes all the way around. If there's 60 cars in that loop, the fire truck has to get in.
Yes,
There's enough room for the fire truck to get
Yes.
by. Is that what you, I don't know. I just want to make sure. The life safety issue is taken care of. Thank you.
There was also, we talked about, pardon me, we did talk about there is an emergency access in the back off of Monroe as well. We put that in case for whatever reason, for public safety, that was a request. We talked with the police chief when we met with him, the fire chief met with him, that back entrance will still have an emergency gate there as well,
Correct.
for that particular reason.
All right. All right, with that, we'll open up the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns, please come up. Okay, would you guys just move the issue over so that the person speaking at the podium can be seen?
Name's Greg Mann, 6 Monroe Circle. I'm in Alberta. I have a question about the floodplain. Has that been fixed?
Tom?
Bill can answer that.
Excuse me. It's almost fixed. We received comments from FEMA last week, and they have asked for a flood certificate for the areas that we are taking out of the floodplain, and those will be submitted to FEMA this week.
Okay, because last time I heard it was 2 weeks, and that was over 2 months ago.
No, well, I had said, 2 to 4 weeks, number one, and given the holidays between Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and so forth, there was no guarantee as to what we would receive back, on a timely response. I heard back last Tuesday, and we are responding back this week, so they'll have the information. And hopefully, because there are no long holidays or long breaks for holidays, it will be a quicker response. But all signs point to a favorable approval.
Because I'm just concerned, I have a camp up in New Hampshire, which was in a floodplain. They since revised it. And my insurance company was adamant that, if I don't have that flood insurance, anything that happens, their hands are like, nope, not us. So I'm afraid that if you do start doing any work in the site and there is, God forbid, a problem or injury or lost equipment due to flooding or something like that, it's either the town's going to be liable for it or whatever, because, you're building in a floodplain until you get that certificate in your hand and say, no, we're not, until that. So, it was stated that they were going to start working in January, and it's been 2 months since this was, and if you actually talk to me, it's been more than 2 months. It's been more like 4 or 5 months, because when this project started, I brought up this issue, and I was told that it was taken care of, and it wasn't until 2 months ago that they said, oh, no, it's not taken care of. When I got a plan that showed that the floodplain was still in existence in the same spot. So it's not like, as far as I'm concerned, it's not like it's been an issue that's brand new. It's been there for a while and just ignored or whatever. At what time is you people might not know this, what does the high school let out? Does the high school let out at 2 or 3 o'clock, around the same time that?
I believe it's 1:55 or something like that, or
Around
1:55.
Okay, is that figured into your traffic plans too? Because I go to work in Billerica every day, and I know that at 7:10, if I'm out on the road at 7:10, I hit the high school traffic going in. And I know that if I'm at 7:45, I hit the elementary school traffic going in, and it's a big backup. The end of Pleasant Street, where it hits Whipple Road, because there is no light there or anything like that, it's a nightmare to get out onto the road, because they use that, use Whipple Road as, whenever there's a backup on Route 3 or 495, the traffic comes straight through there. So, so you're not only gonna be dealing with, trying to get people back out onto Pleasant Street, you're also gonna be dealing with people on Pleasant Street trying to get either onto 38 or onto Whipple Road. So, the high school traffic is not being talked about at all. And that's gonna impact this area too, So,
Let me just see if I get your question right. Was the high school's time of school taken into consideration in the traffic study?
Yes, but it's out of the
window?
window, correct.
Okay. So it was taken into consideration, but their times.
they're saying that it's not gonna affect what their study is.
It won't affect the numbers they put
The
together.
numbers that they put together, okay. The last time I was here, I asked about, my property happens to abut, and there's gonna be a differential in height. It's like I'm not sure, I can't remember whether it's 4 feet 8 inches or 4.8 feet difference between my property and where their property is going to be, and I'm gonna be right behind their loading dock, and I'm afraid of traffic coming around, and wintertime and icing conditions, somebody loses the control, and they go right through, because all it is gonna be is a stockade fence. There is not gonna be guardrails, at least I was told that, or Jersey barriers or anything like that. And I really don't want, have anybody come through that and be above my property and then get a little extra, leeway to keep on going towards my property. I'm probably
Straight away.
10, 20 feet, my garage is, from where they're gonna be putting this elevation. And the last time they said, oh, no, they weren't gonna do that, they were gonna put up trees, but I can't wait for trees to grow up in 20 years so they'd be big enough to stop a car. And a wooden picket fence is not gonna stop a car.
Any comments on?
Well, yes, we have guardrails around the corner loop. We have speed tables that will reduce the speed of any vehicle traveling around that loop. There is a buffer zone between the road and the property line. There's a landscape buffer zone. There's a swale, that road is curved. There's a concrete or vertical curb there. So,
So let me just ask this. I'm not interested in building guardrails around the entire thing when people are gonna have a hard time going very fast to begin with.
Right.
But on the off chance that someone who has a truck in the loading dock has some sort of medical issue, slams their foot down on the gas, and were to jet forward out of there, is it possible to consider putting at least some guardrail in?
We could certainly.
That unlikely scenario, but would prevent a large truck from shooting off through the fence
We could
towards
certainly
his
put
house?
in, we could certainly look at a straight length of guardrail, at the face of that.
Does that make
thing.
sense? Just- I feel like,
Yeah.
does that sound?
That's what I've only been asking for. I'm not asking you to put a barrier around the whole property. It doesn't make sense if it's not, even in a small parking lot where one's elevated than another, they have a guardrail there just to keep people from going through, and that's all I was
So we'll
asking
have-
for.
we'll have you
and
look at that.
Everybody kept on saying, no, they're not gonna do it.
But does that address?
That addresses my issue, and I thank you for bringing it up. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
That would be it for me, thank you.
Excellent,
Thank you.
So, back to his first question, as soon as you do get that information, forward it in. Don't wait for our next hearing just to bring it in. If you get it, you might as well get it into the department as soon as possible so that we know that that's been dealt with on the,
On the flood,
on the
yes.
flood, yeah. Just
Yeah,
that way-
absolutely. It's certainly nothing we've ignored. We've gone through all the process. It's FEMA.
But as soon as, like I said, as soon as
Yeah.
we have the information, it'd be better to get it in and not just wait for the next submission of whatever it is you're bringing in.
Agreed.
Just send it in as soon as possible, that we know when the date is, that it's not.
Agreed.
If that's the determination,
And,
correct?
and just so everyone's clear, we're not, the building isn't in the floodplain. It never was. Or even, it's just the floodplain kind of pokes out into the football field a little bit, that's all.
All right. Well, I mean, that is the first thing you're working on, so
Yeah.
we'll probably need that answer if you want to do that. So, anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns at this time? Going once, twice? All right, right back to the board. Any other questions from the board at this time?
Nope. I had a question, Mr. Chairman, regarding the old field house. Some of the stonework that's in that old field house, some of that gonna be maintained and put back into the site?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, we're looking to take some of that stonework and replicate it in the new field house.
Okay.
As
Okay.
the base, and those piers that are there,
Mm-hmm.
those two piers, we're gonna looking to replicate those piers as an entryway into the new field house as well.
The names that are up on top, are they gonna stay?
The names, on the lintels, the concrete lintels, we're looking to reuse those as well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my
So-
name
Are
is
you up there?
Are you up there? Oh, now we are.
Well, make sure at least that one makes it over, will you? All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
board members, just with respect to the field house, the project team has met with has met several times with the Tewksbury Historic Commission. We've applied and had discussions at length with the Massachusetts Historic Commission. There is a signed memorandum of agreement between the two commissions, Massachusetts and Tewksbury, and we had a recent walkthrough tour with members of the Tewksbury Historic Commission with respect to just what Mr. Velatelli mentioned about the stonework and the piers and other items or items both at the center school and the field house that are going to be preserved and set aside for heritage purposes as well. So that's all in play.
Now, yeah, one
And
more
Mr.
question.
Delaney's plaque.
Correct.
Oh, no, it's just 1963.
There's no discussion of any solar panels at the school, correct?
Not at this time.
Okay. All set?
Anyone else? Sir, did you have something? Sir, did you have something?
There are provisions for it.
Oh,
There are provisions for it,
Okay.
for the PV, for the
Yeah.
photovoltaic.
That's the electrical engineer speaking.
Okay. Thank you. All right. No other questions, comments right now? All right, so for the next meeting?
yeah.
So we have a motion to continue this until 7:15 on January 27th, 2020. Okay, you want, so do you guys, do you expect to have materials ready for 220, I'm sorry, for the 27th? Or is 210 make more sense?
I think we're thinking 210.
Okay, all right.
The last time we met with
All right.
the town engineer.
But that's fine, then that's what the town planner was just commenting on. Okay, so in that case, then it would be a motion to continue this to 7:10 on February 10th.
Jim, hang on, I think he had a
2020.
comment about.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we acknowledge that we probably will have some additional information submitted to the board, probably not in time for the board to review and have further discussions on certain submission information for the 27th. Therefore, the 10th of February would be the next discussion in that respect. However, we do remain available to attend the 27th to both provide any updates or to answer any additional questions from the board or the public if the board so chooses. Bottom line is, we're available the 27th and the 10th at the discretion of the board.
All right, so why don't we do this then? Because if we don't put you on the agenda this way, you can't come in on the 27th. So why don't we continue it to the 27th at 7:15? with the expectation that unless something comes up that we want to discuss, that we're likely to continue that hearing to this 10th. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yep.
All right, so then we're back to a motion to continue to January 27th, 2020 at 7:15.
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I don't think they have stop. I mean, it's something big. Maybe we're just gonna. No. All right, so, takes care of that, continue. Moving on to old business. Is there any old business anyone wishes to discuss at this time? No? No? All right, no old business. Any new business anyone wishes to discuss at this time? No new business? All right, correspondence? Nothing to discuss. Town planners report.
Nope.
Nothing? All right, so we
Just
just
an
have
update.
the Hilton update in here. Okay, so what does, all right. Look at this. So the Hilton issue is at least finalized.
My question is, are they still gonna build it?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't been informed if they are going to proceed to
Could
develop
we
it.
reach out to them now that it's done and just see if they have an advisory to us as to the likelihood of them going forward with the project? I mean, obviously, it's not binding, but just informationally, if they, I mean, I feel like if they went all the way through the process to the end, hopefully it's still their intent to go forward, but
Want to put mine together?
obviously, because if anybody asks, then we have an answer. We've been told that
You know
they
something?
plan to move forward.
I looked at that
It's
thing
not binding,
over and
obviously.
over. I couldn't figure out,
How many trips?
yeah. You know, because the thing is, when they were talking about.
So we took care of
originally,
everything in correspondence, so everybody's all set with that? Yeah. Are we all set with the, nobody has any stuff, anything on the correspondence or anything, right, they want to discuss? No, all right, so with that, take a motion for adjournment. Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good evening.